You wanted a video on Treeless Saddles? Here are two of my saddles. This saddle here is the very first saddle, the Treeless saddle, that I bought, and I bought it brand new about 15 years ago. It's a Trekker Talent saddle. Now if you search for Trekkers these days, they've changed a lot. They don't look like this anymore, they look very different, and people, when I say it's a Trekker saddle, always say to me, are you sure that's a Trekker? But it is. It's got the little tag on here. It's very old style. I think it's one of the original ones. I originally bought it for Erna when she was very young. I put it on her and it didn't suit her at all. So Jane has some very interesting issues with saddles and girths, and I thought, why not give it a go on her? And it suited her perfectly. It didn't get rid of all the problems that we had, but it got rid of a lot of them. So Jane inherited this saddle and we did everything in it. We did dressage, we did trek, we did cross country. These days Seren wears it, so it's still in use and still absolutely adore it. So that's my Trekker Talent. And here we have my barefoot saddle. Now I've got two barefoot saddles. They're pretty much exactly the same. This one's Erna's and the other one Juliet wears. The other one is only different in that it's green. Weirdly, it's a special edition grasshopper saddle, and so it's green. This one I think was just brown but has faded to a slight green colour because it's one of the older styles. Now both of the saddles, the barefoot saddles I've got, are barefoot Cheyennes. They do lots of different styles, so like dressage styles and like more Portuguese sort of styles. This is a Cheyenne. It's kind of like a GP style. It's really versatile. As you can see, it's got a slightly bigger seat than the Trekker, which these days I find a little bit more comfortable. But apart from that, they're a very similar style, so I do seem to quite like this style. So you might think, what is a treed saddle and what is a treeless saddle? Well, your traditional treed saddle is built around a wooden, plastic, fiberglass frame, which is here, which is called a tree. And it's solid and it's a weight bearing thing, so it spreads the weight of the rider around the horse so it's not concentrated in one place. This is quite often the thing that people don't like about treeless saddles, and is why they won't use them, is the fact that you don't have that tree, you don't have that weight bearing surface, and where a normal saddle is completely rigid here, with a treeless saddle you can actually bend them and fold them in half and lay them completely and utterly flat. So that is quite different to a normal saddle. This is why it's very important to use the right pads. Now a lot of people, including me, it's exactly what I did when I had this saddle, and if you look at all the old photos of me riding Jane, you'll see I had a tiny thin numner underneath. Sometimes I had one with a sticky bit so it didn't slip, a bit like what's under here. A lot of the time just a thin numner, and that is the wrong thing to do. Luckily Jane was fine with it, but you need to have the proper padding because the weight bearing is not there on a treeless saddle, so you need to replace it with something. Now the newer model Barefoots have something called VPS, which is built-in panels to the saddle, so they're starting to build that within the saddles. But with these older style saddles you do need to put something underneath them. So with the Barefoot I've got the proper physio pad under here, and I don't know if you saw when I turned it over, it's got panels, excuse how dirty it is, built into the pad here, and a channel down here. So what that does is it lifts your rider's weight off of the spine and spreads it across the back like panels in a saddle would do. It's also got this non-slip stuff, so the saddle doesn't move, which is another problem you can have with a treeless saddle. And this, which I love, it's split at the front, so you can put it right up into the front and it keeps it off the horse's back. So it's fully designed to make it the most comfortable it can be and to spread the rider's weight like a treed saddle would do. Now if you don't have one of those pads, because they are very expensive, and I must admit the two that I've got came with the saddles when I bought them. Second hand, for the pad alone you're looking at about 90 to 100, and I think new they're sort of 150 to 200 pounds depending on where you get them from, but you need to have them, it's really important. Now with Seren's saddle I do something slightly different, and we have one of these pads underneath. Now this is a Pro Light pad, and again it's very similar. Got the channel here, so it lifts it up away from the spine, and the pads to spread the weight over the back of the horse. This one's also got pockets in it, so if you need to rise it up at the back or the front, you can do that as well. So it's quite a good versatile pad. It's got foam in it, so it's a bit like memory foam really. It's very shock absorbing and just makes it more comfortable for the horse. And then she just has a simple pad underneath to keep the dirt away from the saddle. I was actually told by a saddler to use one of these under the Treeless Saddles if you can't get the correct pad. A traditional saddle fitter actually told me I need to ride in a treeless saddle. Because I am tall and because I ride ponies, she said the length of my leg from here to my knee is so long that she wouldn't be able to fit me into a traditional saddle for Erna. And considering Erna's the biggest pony I've got, I was a bit stuffed. So what she suggested is I went back to treeless, because I'd actually gone to a treed saddle with Erna at that point. Go back to treeless because the way the saddle sits you and the weight distribution would suit us a lot better. And to be fair, it does, and she's much happier. All my ponies go really nicely in treeless saddles. I can't recommend them enough. This has been amazing. I've actually got another one of these as well, a black one. They are so valuable to me that I'd never let them go, because you just struggle to find these nowadays. They're so old and obsolete, but they work so well. And because she has a little pad, and Sarah only has tiny riders now, it suits her down to the ground. So just going for a bit of a closer view of the saddles. So this is Erna's barefoot saddle. You can see the little label there. I would always recommend going for a brand of treeless saddle. It always annoys me when you see posts from people, usually on Facebook or on the internet somewhere, saying, I tried a treeless saddle once, it was awful, never again. It's a bit like saying, I tried a treed saddle once, it was awful, never again, when you've tried the cheapest, most horrible treed saddle in the world, and it is one of my bugbears. So, as you would advise with looking for a treed saddle, go for a good quality brand. You know, cheaper is not better. You can get good bargains, but make sure they are branded ones. You can see there my little Trekker brand, which is very worn. You can barely see it now, but it's definitely there. Try it for a few times as well. Don't just get on and decide you don't like it. Treeless is very different to treed, and it can feel a bit strange, so you do need to try it a couple of times to see how you feel, how the horse feels. You also need to get the padding right. If the padding's wrong, you've got no chance basically. The saddles will slide, they'll move, the horse won't be comfortable, you won't be comfortable, you can feel perched, you can feel like you're sinking into the middle of the saddle if you haven't got the padding right. So it's one of these things you have to put a bit of time into, but when you get it right and when you know what you've got and it's all working, it is amazing. So again, just a bit of a closer view of the barefoot pad. So as I say, Juliet's got the same saddle but in green, nice dark green colour, and she's also got a square shaped saddle pad on hers, which is it's exactly the same, it just is a square shape. So you can see you've got the non-stick, you've got the sticky stuff that runs down in here. This just helps the saddle to keep still and not move around. You can see it does a great job of protecting the saddle. It's really lovely and clean under there, unlike under here, which is rather dirty, and this does need a wash. You would think I would have washed it before I did this, but no. So you can see at the back you've got the channel here for above the spine, so it takes the weight off the spine, and the panels here to spread the weight evenly over the horse's back. It's a lovely material under here as well. It's really soft. It does seem to soak up the sweat off the horse's backs. Little leather pad here where the girth straps go, so it just doesn't damage the numner. So I know some saddles, you know, with the girth, it causes damage to your saddle pads, or it gets caught and rips, or you get those horrible black marks. So yeah, it's really good it's got that. But basically it's just separated, so it spreads out like this. I know from normal saddles and like normal saddle pads, they end up laying really flat and you have to keep pulling them up in the front of the saddle in the pommels, try and get it up off the horse's back, and it's really annoying, and they work their way back down again. You don't get that with this. This stays up all the time. You can pull it up and it just stays there, and I love that. I think all saddle pads should have it. Absolutely love that. So I suppose you could describe Treeless Saddles, or the ones I've got anyway, as being mono flap saddles. So they only have one flap. Usually with like your traditional GP saddle, you'd pull this up here and there'd be another flap underneath, which you can see there isn't, where your girth would be. Because these are dressage style, as most treeless saddles are, you don't have that, so it's just one flap. You're nice and close to the horse's side, and yeah, it just feels absolutely amazing. You can feel the horse's movements so nicely. You're really close to them, so you can make your aids be felt really easily, and you can also like feel the horse's body heat through them. They're just incredible, absolutely amazing.